So it has been almost 6 months since the beginning of the war in Iran, also known as Operation Epic Fury, which was started by US President Donald Trump on February 28th of this year. I think it'll be August 14th or something when this video comes out, so yeah, it's been a while, and I just wanted to post this video just to, go over how monumentally stupid this entire thing is, and how much Donald Trump and his entire cabinet have screwed up this situation, which, in my opinion, may even be on purpose. So the first thing I'd like to do is just go over the Venezuela war, or not really a war, more the Venezuela kidnapping. Um, Nicolas Maduro, as I'm pretty sure everyone knows by now, was taken and he was dropped into the United States, where he is going to rot in jail where he belongs. He is a dictator, a murderer of his own people. He deserves to be in jail, and I'm happy that he's in jail. Justice was served in that case. But when it comes to Venezuela as a whole, it doesn't really seem like a lot has changed, because and Maduro's party is still in power. His vice president is just now the president, and all that's really changed in Venezuela is that, I guess, their oil revenue is going to increase a bit more, and it's western aligned instead of eastern aligned. Now that's good. That's good. I'm not saying that's bad, and I recognize that you can't always work with only democratic countries when you're fighting against the Russia-China axis, but this is like uh, besides the point. Uh, I'm of the opinion that what happened in Venezuela, the the ease of the operation that was done to take Maduro, the fact that the United States suffered zero casualties and barely any material damages, is what eventually inspired Trump and his cabinet to go after Iran. Now, Iran, that's a completely different story. So when we went into Venezuela, right? The pinpoint strike on Venezuela's main dictator, the head honcho, Nicolas Maduro, that literally just moved the entire country over to America's sphere of influence, basically, away from China and Russia. What happened here is that Trump and his cabinet believed that you could do the same thing with Iran. You could move in, you can attack, you kill some of their leaders, the people will rise up, and you will have a Western aligned Iran. It's a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale. It's nonsense. Not around the time, because the protests had died out by then, but in December, January of 2025 to 2026, there were gigantic protests in Iran. Why, you may ask? Well, it's because, the Iranian regime sucks. The IRGC sucks. They're murderers. They kill a lot of people. They repress women in their country. It's ridiculous. They are treated like second-class citizens, and it's horrific what happens in Iran. I am sure that there's a lot of, abuse that happens in Iran. The laws surrounding many types of people are very strict, and there was the entire like hijab burning rallies, which happened like a few years prior, which just so goes to show how primitive the Iranian regime really is, how primitive and disgusting it is. But there were protests in 2025, 2026. They were protesting that, and the fact that the economic conditions were very poor in the country, partially brought on by sanctions from the West. So people were suffering, they were starving, they didn't have jobs, and who was there to blame but the Iranian regime, which had made their lives miserable? So they went out to the streets, they protested, and they protested a lot. Now, I do remember around this time that there was a lot of talk of people saying, the United States or the West should intervene in Iran to help the protesters. Now, it is now that and I was actually one of those people, initially, who genuinely did think, we need to help these protesters. We need to start bombing the IRGC, bomb the IRGC, ruin them, help the Iranian people retake the country. That was always a fairy tale. with the benefit of hindsight, I'm realizing now that was a fairy tale. Anyone who did believe that, I'm sorry to tell you, even if the United States had intervened at that point, even if the entire collective West intervened at that point, there would not have been a victory against Iran. And what we're seeing now in the Iran war is very big proof of that. So February 28th comes around. Um, Bibi Netanyahu, Donald Trump, they start going after Iran. They start bombing it. They kill a bunch of their leaders who, quite frankly deserved it. Those IRGC commanders, the Ayatollah. These people deserve it. I'm not shedding any tears for them. I don't feel bad for them. Don't get the wrong idea from this video. But here is the real problem with it. The protests had already ended by this point, right? The IRGC has shown itself to be very, very resilient. It's a very resilient organization. We might hate it. We might, in the West, we might say, they're backwards, the way they treat their people, but they're very resilient. They know how to deal with things. And for example, I think it was around 30,000 Iranians were killed in the protests, which is insane, but 30,000 Iranians were killed during the protests. And they were stamped out. They were stamped out before Operation Epic Fury ever began. Even if there was some kind of strikes that happened during the protests, I don't think it would have been enough. And that's because of something called the Mosaic Defense, which exists in Iran. Basically, the IRGC, it can literally just, it doesn't need a central command, basically. It can splinter off into all these different groups that can just start shooting and keeping their power to themselves. And that was shown in the initial days of Operation Epic Fury. Why do you think the missiles were flying literally everywhere? There were missiles flying like in places near like Turkey or Cyprus. It's because of the fact that these were regional commanders acting on their own accord, and these regional commanders, they know what to do. This decentralized, model of power that exists within the IRGC is why Iran's regime is so resilient. There's no way to, painlessly remove that regime. Unlike in Venezuela, where they were able to, make the entire country come into the sphere of the United States. You can't do that with Iran. You can't do that with Iran. It's far more difficult. And, quite frankly, nothing is impossible per se, but it's right there next to impossible. So effectively what happened was the United States had entered a quagmire, which it didn't have an off-ramp to. Venezuela, there is an easy off-ramp. With Iran, there is none. There is no off-ramp because guess what? Iran is not Venezuela. It is not, like, Venezuela is smaller. It has a much smaller population. And unlike the IRGC, which is much more well-equipped, the Venezuelan forces were never well-equipped. So here is the main problem. There is a war going on. We keep bombing them. We keep killing a lot of their leaders. We attack their military facilities, but it doesn't matter because of how resilient the IRGC is. In the opening days of the war, it seemed like, the Iranian regime's on its last legs. Started sinking Iranian naval vessels. Their Ayatollah was killed. Heads of the IRGC were killed. And it was crazy. But in the end, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. And the new Ayatollah, the new leaders of Iran, they're standing firm, and they're standing against the United States. And they closed the Strait of Hormuz, and that's really where I'm getting at. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz has turned this from, a slightly irritating operation that just ended up being like a small failure to being one of the most, one of the largest strategic catastrophes that the United States has experienced, like, in the 21st century as a whole. It might be the biggest. And the main reason is this. People are upset. Everywhere across the world, people are upset. They are angered, and that includes people in the West. Why are people angry? Because their energy prices are going up. Because the Strait of Hormuz, like 20% of the world's oil goes through that. It's a lot. It's a lot. And there was no actual strategy to combat that, it seems. The United States can't really bring, destroyers and stuff in range of Iranian missiles because, a few, deaths here and there, the United States suffered, 20 casualties so far in this war. A few deaths here and there won't lose you the midterms. What will lose you the midterms is losing like a destroyer or something, right? Losing like hundreds of sailors in an attack by an Iranian missile, or in a drone fire, like literally like whatever. That's what's going to lose you the midterms. And Donald Trump and his cronies need to hold on to the House and Senate, ideally, for the midterms. That's their goal. So they're seeing this war. They realize that they've screwed up, and now they have a decision to make. They can either stop, and that's probably not going to work because the Iranians are just going to keep the strait closed because they want an answer for this, or they can double down. And that's what they did. They doubled down. So the war continued, right? And they doubled down. Iran and Israel, sorry, America and Israel, they doubled down. They kept fighting. Iran kept on doing their drone and missile attacks all across the Gulf. They did against American military bases. Some American soldiers died, and the conflict just slowly got more bloody. And now we are at a point where there just doesn't seem to be any way out. There was at one point what was called a memorandum of understanding, which was meant to be signed. And let me just tell you how terrible of a deal it was. Um, it was ridiculous. There was initially a deal. It was like the joint protocol deal made under the Obama administration that was made to stop Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons, which was the initial justification used for the war. By the way, you need to stop Iran from having nuclear weapons. Regime change was also on the table apparently, but the main thing was that. Here was the thing. It was Iran would get access from some frozen assets. They would get sanctions relief, and in return, Iran would not use their uranium. They would I think they'd get rid of their uranium stores, and they would not work on a nuclear weapon. That was the deal, effectively. There are obviously some caveats to the deal and whatnot, but that was generally it. Some sanctions relief and some assets being unfrozen, some billions of dollars given to them, and in exchange, Iran would not pursue nuclear weapon. Now, that is a deal which, in my opinion, is not even that bad. If you think about it for a few seconds, the United States can afford that very easily. It's like a few $1 billion. It can afford it. And the more important thing is, Iran is a rogue state. It is a pariah state. We don't need another Russia or North Korea, right? And Iran would be like another one of those kinds of countries if it had nuclear weapons. We don't need one of those. Absolutely not. And so it was generally a good deal. Um, but obviously, there were people initially. Trump even criticized Obama on his Iran policy, said he was going to start a war there. Eventually, he's the one who actually started. But Trump gets in office and he scraps the deal immediately, right? So it's his fault. It's absolutely his fault. And he does like sometimes he does some bombing raids to attack what he says are the enrichment plants. He attacks the Iranians while they're working on the nuclear weapons, whatever, right? That's all fine and good, but there was no actual agreement that Iran would stop trying to develop a nuclear weapon. um, but now there was this memorandum of understanding which the United States tried to sign with Iran in Versailles, by the way. It's another great power being humiliated in Versailles. But effectively, what the deal was, the United States would cease their military actions, promise not to do them ever again. It was like $300 billion worth of quote unquote reconstruction funds from the United States. That is the most ridiculous one. It was like sanctions relief, and it was that $300 billion. If you don't know how much that is compared to the initial deal, I think the initial deal, the joint protocol under Obama, was $4.2 billion. That's what you get from like a few months of bombing them. That's what you get. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Um, Eventually the deal falls through though because Trump can't help himself from bombing Iran more and more. And I am honestly happy that that deal didn't go through because that would have been insane. $300 billion is a lot of money. You can't just be throwing that around everywhere. But the war has also cost billions upon billions of dollars. So at this point, I don't even know what is going to be more worth it in the long run because we're in a quagmire that we can't get out of. But now we really get to, like the modern, like the main stuff that's happening now. That's the stuff that's happened in August and July. So late July and then August, there has been seemingly an understanding between the United States and Ukraine. One of the only good things that have come out of this war. And it was that, the Ukrainians, they've dealt with Iranian drones that they've been fighting for a long time. Because if you didn't know, Iran supplies Shahed drones to Russia. Iran has been very supportive of Russia in its vicious and barbaric invasion of Ukraine. And the Ukrainians have become battle hardened. They know how to fight against these Iranian drones, and they're very advanced, the Ukrainian army. So the Ukrainians and the Americans begin working together. Zelensky and Trump, they have a meeting. It doesn't go like the meeting that I don't even know how long it happened to go when he initially got into office, where he berated Zelensky. Much better. And it seems that Ukraine is now, I think, has literally killed an Iranian soldier in the Caspian Sea, or sailor in the Caspian Sea. They've begun attacking the supply line between Russia and Iran. Good on them. Obviously, whatever hurts your enemy is important. But now the war has seemingly escalated to a new thing where it's almost as if the wars have like semi combined. Not fully, obviously. I'm not trying to be a fear monger saying, oh, World War III is going to start. Obviously not. But Ukraine has taken advantage of the situation, and now there is a lot more military involvement of the United States in that war. Uh, Trump has agreed to give them Patriot licenses, which is I think the anti-air missile. That's really good. Um, and overall, it seems that the prospects for Ukraine in its own fight for survival are a lot higher. That's the one good thing that's come out of this war. But other than that, it doesn't really seem like much else has happened. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed. I live in New Jersey, so when you go out driving, you see the gas prices. They're still skyrocket high. I've seen like $4. It's ridiculous. It's like COVID all over again, and you know, this is just what's going to keep happening for a while, because the Iranian regime seems very hesitant to make a deal, and Trump also doesn't want to make a deal. And this is where I start getting into the, maybe there's something more to this than just a strategic misstep, because I'm not even sure if it's that anymore. If you look at Trump, right, his stock trading of Trump accounts, of his cronies, of his family, you start to see something very worrying. Number one, Trump has been gaming the stock market. It'll be like, stock market opens. He's like, oh, there's going to be a deal. There's going to be a deal we're going to make with the Ayatollah. We're going to make a deal with Iran. And on by the time the stock market closes, bomb them again, bomb them again, bomb them to smithereens. And that's what's been happening for a while. He's been taking the stock market on tosses and turns and whatnot. And that's already a problem, right? Because he's very clearly gaming the system. A politician like this would always try to game the system like that, but it's not just that. Trump accounts, his family, crony, whatever. These elites, they have also been investing in like military companies, energy companies, the entire time this war has been going on. Why do you think they would do that? Why do you think the elites, who are specifically involved in starting this war, why would they invest in those companies? Obviously, they're trying to make money off of this. They're making a lot of money off of this. They're making money while Americans suffer. I think I saw a statistic recently. It was like $78 billion uh, have been lost by Americans throughout this war because of higher bills, higher utility prices, higher gas prices. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. But that's what's happening now. It's these elites that are in the United States government who are screwing over the American people fully. And by the way, it gets worse, right? It's not just the American people that are getting screwed over. It's, in my opinion, a lot of the free world. If you look at how this war has been handled, a lot of assets have been moved to the Middle East, fighting a war that realistically we just shouldn't have been fighting. I believe in containment. We should contain tyrannical governments. We should contain governments like Russia or China or Iran. They should not be given room to expand and spread their hateful ideologies. But this is not containment. This is trying to. This is something else. This is attacking the country, which works a lot less well. And what has happened now is that, like, ammunition has been running out, or not running out necessarily, but we're using up a lot of it. The United States military using up a lot of missiles, a lot of drone. We're using up a lot of military equipment. We spent tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions, on this very expensive campaign. And what do you think that does to other parts of the world? If we're focusing all this attention on Iran, which is quite frankly not that big of a threat, the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas are their main proxies in the Middle East, but they're very weak. They're weak in conventional warfare. They obviously get beaten pretty badly. They're not an existential threat to anyone, but um, a country like China might actually be. And this is the crux of my argument here. This is not only a strategic misstep just because of the fact that the United States might lose in Iran. It's also because this is showing America's vulnerabilities right to the People's Republic of China. China's looking at this and they're licking their lips. They're realizing, wait a minute. Number one, the Americans are very averse to taking casualties. Very, very averse to taking casualties. When compared to the Iranian casualties in this war, the lower estimate is like 1,800 or something. America's taken 20. So at the very lowest estimates, right? It's like 90 Iranian soldiers dying per American soldier, right? That's pretty bad. But even then, there's a lot of backlash in the country. So China's seeing this, right? They're realizing these guys can't take casualties. They can't. It's bad for them. It hurts them a lot, and they are not as they're not as resilient when it comes to taking casualties as, say, a Russia. Russia's military is weak. It's pathetic, but the one thing it can do is do human wave offensives. It is fully willing to send thousands of men to die every day. And that's just not something that the United States is seemingly willing to do, especially in a war like this. So it's seeing that. It's seeing, weapons being moved out of South Korea or Japan. And, what does this mean for Taiwan? Just think about that for a second. If you are a CCP official right now and you're watching this go down, you're not thinking, oh, what a horrible war. This is terrible. You're thinking, God damn, I think it's time we get ready for the naval invasion of Taiwan. Because they're weak. The Americans, they spend a lot of money on war, and despite the fact that their military is so advanced, they can't really keep it up without spending exorbitant amounts of money and without taking relatively few casualties. In a high casualty conflict with China, uh, there is a much higher chance of a Chinese victory, seemingly, because of the fact that they are almost certainly willing to take a lot more casualties than the United States. So this is the weakness that has been exposed. Afghanistan exposed it a little bit, not too much, in my opinion. But I think Iran is really the place where this is getting exposed a lot more. And additionally, we just have the fact that, this war has created a lot more isolationist sentiment back home. Once again, isolationism in the US, that does not bode well for America's Asian allies, especially. The Europeans, I'm somewhat confident they can take care of themselves, but, you have the far right there, and they're all pro-Russia, so that could be an issue later on. But I'm generally certain that the Europeans might be able to. I don't think in a kinetic confrontation, South Korea and Japan would be able to protect Taiwan. And that's really the issue here. And the fact that the United States is focusing so much on something that is far less of a threat is not just a strategic miscalculation, it is a supreme strategic blunder. And that is really, really bad. So, what this all means effectively is that we have a president, we have an administration, we have elites in the United States government that are using this war to get rich quick. They're using it to make billions upon billions of dollars in stocks while American soldiers die overseas in a pointless conflict that, could have been avoided. And we had a much better deal already made with them like a decade prior. At the same time, other countries are looking at this, mainly China, and I'm certain that they're thinking, there is a lot of opportunity here. There's stuff that we can do, and the Americans are showing their weakness. And you have the rest of the world who largely seem to blame the United States for the beginning of this war, and they're all very upset. And I wonder why they're upset. It's almost as if their utility bills are going up so high. So when those bills go up so high, it's these common people in all these countries, they're going to get angry at the United States. And given the fact that so many countries in the world are democracies, they're going to vote for politicians who are willing to be more, anti-U.S. or politicians who are willing to toe the line between the U.S. and China. And you're going to see that increasingly over the years. Already in many major countries, it's even in the West, it has been shown that the America's like standing among the people of these countries has shrunk significantly. In Canada, the UK, France, mainly most of Western Europe, there seems to be a lot of discontent with the United States. Eastern Europe and East Asia is still generally fine, like Japan, South Korea, Poland, all these countries, because their existence relies a lot more heavily on American aid. But um, a lot of our stronger allies are very, very upset with us, and that's not a good thing. You don't want to upset your allies that much. It's not good. It doesn't help anyone. Um, Additionally, any countries that are currently non-aligned, this isn't going to necessarily push anyone over the edge, but this is making people think, the United States, a world order run by the United States, is unstable. It's full of conflict. America just bombs whoever it wants, and the American elites keep getting rich off the war, so they have no incentive to stop. China doesn't do that, which is why uh, this, like starting this specific conflict as well, is such a strategic blunder. So all this war has really achieved is making many American elites richer, and at the same time making the United States as a whole look a lot worse on the world stage. It's almost as if the current administration, and just administrations in general, the entire 21st century, a lot of our administrations, the Bush, Obama, Biden, Trump, all of these people, what they do is they come into the country, come into the White House, take control of the country, get themselves and their cronies rich, uh, inflate the currency, increase the debt, and leave. That's just what they've been doing. The United States have become a cash cow for all of these people, uh, Democrats and Republicans. That's what we are to them. That's what we are to these people. And the Iran war is no different. We are a cash cow to them. Remember, $78 billion lost by Americans because of how much more they've had to spend on their bills. And it's these guys at the top which are getting all of the money, all of it, because they control the reins of government. So Americans are suffering, people worldwide are suffering. The Iranians, it was never going to get better, but now more of them are just dead, which isn't really good either. That's not really an ideal situation, especially when so many civilians have also died. Thousands of civilians have died in the fighting because Iran, it's horrible, but Iran puts its military installations next to hospital, schools, whatnot, and that gets civilians killed. So civilians have needlessly died in this conflict as well. And yeah, I don't see any real overall benefit for anyone other than the elites. So when I say this is a strategic blunder, that's me being like charitable, I guess, to our current government and to most of the American governments and to a lot of these elites. I'm being charitable to them. Really, the way I see it, in some forms, this is an act of sabotage by our own government because it gets the money. Keep in mind the sabotage has been happening for a while. I think I'm going to make another video about just, how much US elites have been sabotaging the working class or small businesses or just Americans' press freedoms, all for or Americans' health, all for other entities, other elites in other countries, or for their shareholders, whatever else.
And by the way, I'm not a socialist or anything. I know I'm spewing a lot of rhetoric that might sound like a socialist. I'm not a socialist. I'm not a communist. I am a very big believer in capitalism. I'm a very big believer in the American way. But clearly, our current system isn't working. Our elites are using us. Our elites are using us. They are screwing us over. And yeah, this war is just a symptom of that. If you want to take the more pessimistic approach, you can also take the optimistic approach that this is a blunder. Um, but that's really for you to decide. That's for you to do your own reading, and make your own opinions. But that's my take on it.
But
I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day if you've gotten to this point. And yeah, episode 4 of 2012 will come out eventually. I just haven't gotten to working on it yet. But I'm knock on wood, I'm expecting a release sometime in September. But yeah, have a good day, everyone.